Hello everyone, welcome to episode 25 of Conversing on Africa's Peace, a podcast focused on the African Union's Peace and Security Council and key related issues, where we delve into the dynamics of peace and security across the continent, produced by Amani Africa Media and Research Services. I am Previn Habu, and today I'm joined by my colleague Fikr Getachew. Hi Fikr.
Hi Previn, it's great to be here.
Wonderful. So this is the last month of the year, and Djibouti will be chairing the Peace and Security Council. And also, this will be the last time Djibouti chairs before their 3-year mandate at the PSC ends. That is in February 2025. Djibouti's chairship will be under the leadership of His Excellency Ambassador Abdi Mahmoud Abir. The program of work for December was adopted in late November, and some revision has been made to the initial program. Essentially, whereas the initial program of work envisaged the fourth annual joint retreat between the PSC and the APRM, the revised version of the program of work has removed this activity. Aside from that, the initial program of work also had a session on the 10th and the 12th, but these sessions have now been moved to the 17th and 18th respectively. With these changes in place, the program envisages 4 substantive sessions, but covering 6 agenda items, except for one session envisaged to take place at the ministerial level. All the other sessions are scheduled to take place at the ambassadorial level. 5 of the 6 agenda items are on thematic issues, and the remaining one agenda is dedicated to a country-specific situation. This is also the month the PSC always convenes for the annual high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa in Oran, Algeria. Additionally, the PSC is expected to hold informal consultations with countries in political transition. But as always, before we forge ahead with some of the details on the sessions that will be featured this month, let's do a brief recap of what transpired during the previous month. So looking back in November 2024, DRC presided over the chairship of the PSC for the first time, actually, under the leadership of His Excellency Ambassador Jean-Leon Ngandu Ilunga. The council undertook 7 substantive sessions, except for one session that focused on Libya. All other sessions were dedicated to thematic issues. The PSC also held its 16th retreat on the review of its working methods from the 5th to 6th November in Djibouti, and hosted also the 15th consultative meeting with the European Union's Peace and Security Committee. On November 1st, the PSC held its first session on the traditional annual thematic agenda for November, which is on youth, peace and security. Coming in as its 1243rd session, we can recall that it was in November 2018 that the Peace and Security Council decided to hold a session on youth, peace and security on an annual basis. And notably, this year also marks the 5th year since the establishment of this agenda as a standing agenda in the annual program of work of the Peace and Security Council. Fikr, could you take us through what also transpired during the month?
Yeah, so on the 12th of November, the Council held its first and only country-specific session for the month, which came in as the Council's 1244th meeting. This was to consider the situation in Libya. During the session, the Council reaffirmed its strong support for the permanent ceasefire agreement established back in October 2020 and commended both Libyan stakeholders and international actors for sticking to their commitments. However, there was a significant concern expressed over the ongoing political stalemate in the country. The PSC pledged solidarity with the Libyan people in their quest for peace and stability, and also welcomed efforts of the 5+5 Joint Military Commission emphasizing the need for the withdrawal of foreign fighters and mercenaries. The PSC also urged Libyan political actors to avoid any unilateral decision that could escalate tensions. Another highlight was the praise for the UN's role in facilitating talks that led to a compromise on the leadership of the Central Bank of Libya, which has allowed oil productions to resume, which is an essential step for the country.
Yeah, also not to forget, among other decisions, as highlighted in the communique, they announced plans to take a field mission to the country to engage directly with various stakeholders on the ground. If you can recall, in 2022, the PSC proposed a field mission to Libya that could have enabled a more substantial engagement, but this plan was ultimately not executed. And we can also see that in 2024, the PSC has shown limited engagement with Libya compared to previous years. While the PSC conducted 2 sessions on Libya in 2023, this year has seen only 1 session, and probably the only one, not unless otherwise. However, the AU's ad hoc Committee of Heads of State and Government on Libya, led by Congo, held a summit-level meeting on the 5th of February 2024 in Brazzaville in preparation for the launch of the national reconciliation process.
We expect this field mission will be prioritized in 2025.
Hopefully.
Moving on the 18th of November, the PSC traveled to the DRC for its 1245th session on the implementation of DDR and PCRD programs for consideration of peace, security, and socio-economic activities in Africa. During the session, the PSC looked into challenges and ways forward, and the session came during the AU's observation on PCRD Awareness Week, in which this year's theme was Charting the Path Forward, Collaborative Strategies for Effective PCRD Policy Implementation. Regarding post-conflict reconstruction and development, the discussion delved into popularizing the policy and its 9 pillars to ensure its effective implementation to consolidate peace in the continent. You recall that the 37th Ordinary Session of the Assembly, held during February 2024 in Addis, endorsed the revised PCRD policy in order to address the evolving nature of conflicts and other threats to peace, security, and development in Africa. And in this regard, they called for the effective implementation of that PCRD policy. The discussion on DDR, moreover, focused on the importance of successful DDR and SSR as essential components for conflict prevention and peace-building efforts, as well as preventing relapse in member states emerging from conflict. These discussions highlighted the multidimensional nature of the scope of DDR and its cross-cutting themes, which included SSR, reconciliation, transitional justice, climate change, and the management of natural resources.
Great. Then on the 26th of November, the PSC convened its 1247th session to deliberate on enhancing mechanisms for curbing the illegal exploitation of natural resources by armed and terrorist groups in Africa, a theme that the PSC has increasingly focused on and in the recent years. For example, in its 575th session, which was held in February 2016, it was dedicated to the topic of natural resources and conflicts in Africa. And during this session, the Council emphasized that while natural resources are vital for economic growth, they have also contributed to conflicts in vulnerable nations. The PSC highlighted that in many of the continent's protracted conflicts, issues related to access, control, and distribution of natural resources are significant underlying causes that need to be effectively addressed. Subsequent sessions include like the 776th session, which was held in May 2018 on the briefing on illicit flows and financing of arms in Africa, have linked the illegal exploitation of resources to illicit financial flows, transnational crimes, terrorism, poaching, and weapons proliferation, particularly involving non-state armed groups. Yeah, and moving on from that, on 27th of November, PSC convened to receive a briefing on the Continental Early Warning and Security Outlook by the Committee of Intelligence and Security Services of Africa, that's CISA, and also the African Union Mechanism for Police Cooperation, AFRIPOL, and finally the African Union Counterterrorism Center, which is formerly known as the African Center for the Study and Research on Terrorism. And this was a session which presented an early warning analysis focusing on the political, security, and socio-economic dynamics shaping and informing existing and emerging conflicts and security conditions on the continent.
The last session of the month was the ministerial level session held on discussions on experiences and lessons learned in the implementation of the PSC mandate in line with the AU Constitutive Act and the PSC protocol. This was held on the 28th of November and chaired by Therese Wagner-Kwakyamba, the Minister of State and Foreign Affairs Cooperation and Francophonie of the DRC. The session touched upon the need for all member states to reaffirm their commitment to uphold and fully respect the AU principles as enshrined in the AU Constitutive Act, the PSC Protocol, and other AU legal instruments. The discussions during the session also delved on the need to ensure the implementation of the UNSCR Resolution 2719 on financing AU-led peace support operations, the importance of regular interactions between the PSC and the RECs and regional mechanisms, as well as the need for the Continental early warning system to devote particular attention to the challenge that can potentially impact negatively or interstate relations. These discussions also importantly highlighted the need to ensure expeditious implementation of all decisions of the AU Assembly and of the Peace and Security Council in Africa, and also the need for the PSC to regularly review its working methods and all available tools to adapt them to contemporary peace and security dynamics in the continent, amongst, of course, other decisions.
Yeah, thank you, Fikr, for that look back. So looking ahead to December, as I mentioned earlier, we are expecting to have 4 substantive sessions with 6 agenda items. So the month kicked off with the 11th annual high-level seminar on peace and security in Africa, enhancing cooperation between the AU Peace and Security Council and the African members of the UN Security Council in addressing peace and security issues on the continent, which is also known as the Oran process. And it took place on the 1st and 2nd of December. Fikr, what's the significance of this seminar?
Yeah, so this seminar is held in accordance with Article 17.3 of the PSC Protocol, which stipulates a close working relationships between the Peace and Security Council and the African members of the United Nations Security Council. This Oran process also serves to strengthen the partnership between the AU's Peace and Security Council and the A3+, which includes the African members of the UNSC, as well as Guyana. This year, the focus was on 3 key areas. It focused on building capacities to combat terrorism, implementing the Pact for the Future, with a focus on the reform of the UNSC and implementation of Resolution 2719, and improving PSC A3+ coordination. There's also anticipation around the adoption of the Oran Process Manual, which had been delayed for further member state input. This edition of the Oran process featured 15 PSC members, the current African members of the United Nations Security Council, which are Algeria, Mozambique is the outgoing A3 member, Sierra Leone, and Somalia, which will be an incoming A3 member in 2025. In addition, there are also friends of the seminar, senior officials from the AU Commission and the UN Secretariat, as well as some other international partners, as invited as supporters of the seminar.
Very well. So after the Oran process, on 5th of December, the PSC convenes to review the implementation of its decisions. If you can recall, the PSC established a mechanism through its committee of experts to monitor the status of its implementation. Specifically, paragraph 50 of the PSC manual on working methods provides that, and I quote, the PSC committee of experts develops a matrix on the status of the implementation of PSC decisions every 6 months for consideration and adoption by the PSC on the basis of information provided by the PSC Secretariat. The status of implementation feeds into the reports of the PSC to the Assembly, end of quote. Therefore, this meeting, which is expected to feature a presentation on the implementation of key PSC decisions, aims to discuss the current level of implementation of PSC decisions, review the mechanisms used in the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, and for this purpose, identify gaps faced with implementing critical decisions of the Council.
Yeah, exactly. Non-implementation has been a recurring issue for the Council. Since 2022, the PSC Secretariat introduced a matrix for monitoring progress on this, and we're hoping that this session will gauge how effective that tool has been and where improvements are needed. It's also expected that the outcome of this deliberation will include providing ambassadors with a clearer understanding of the PAP's implementation process, to offer guidance on key decisions related to specific country situations, and establishing regular engagement at the ambassadorial level regarding the status of implementation of the decisions of the Council.
Yeah, from there on December 17th, Council will hold a session with 2 agenda items. Initially planned to happen on the 10th of December, one of the agenda items is briefing on enhancing AU Continental early warning system and early action. And the second agenda item will be on the review of the country structural vulnerability and resilience assessment, that is the CSVRA, and country structural vulnerability mitigation strategies, that is the CSVMS. On the first agenda item, we can recall that on its 1208th session, which was convened on the 16th April 2024, PSC discussed ways to unblock obstacles and ensure effective early warning and response. During the session, the PSC not only expressed its commitment to fully implement Article 12 of the PSC Protocol on the establishment and operationalization of AU's Continental Early Warning System, but also tasked the AU Commission to take specific measures to enhance early warning and early response. The Commission was also required to report back to the PSC before the end of the year. Against this backdrop, the task that the PSC entrusted during that session to the AU Commission for reporting back before the end of the year draws on prior engagements of the PSC on the subject. If we can also recall, revamping the AU early warning system was one of the focuses of the Mombasa retreat, which was held in May 2021. The conclusions of the retreat emphasized the need for regular horizon scanning briefings and informal consultations as platforms for the AU Commission and PSC to share particularly sensitive early warning information. Moreover, the 1000th session of the PSC underlined, I quote, the need to promote the early warning system in the spirit of identifying at early stages conflict and crisis situations, while underscoring the imperative to confer the required importance to conflict prevention efforts, end of quote. The session also comes in the wake of the Dar es Salaam Declaration's commitment, in which it called for the enhancement of the PSC's conflict prevention mandate, including by responding swiftly to early warning signs of looming conflicts and crisis, and fully utilizing all available preventive diplomacy tools. On the other hand, on the second agenda item, which focuses on the review of the country structural vulnerability and resilience assessment, known as the CSVRA, and the country structural vulnerability mitigation strategies, CSVMS. We can recall that these tools were developed following the PSC's request during its 463rd session, which was held in 27th October 2014 in an open session on the theme structural prevention of conflict, reinvigorating states in a fragile situation in Africa, for the creation of a structural vulnerability assessment. After their development, the PSC at its 901st meeting, which was held in 13th December 2019, on the topic AU's conflict prevention and early warning efforts and challenges encountered, as well as on horizon scanning briefing on the state of peace and security in Africa, encouraged member states, and I quote, to make full use of the tools available at the Commission for structural conflict prevention, including the country's structural vulnerability and resilience assessment and the country structural vulnerability mitigation strategies, end of quote. Despite their potential benefits, these voluntary instruments have not seen widespread adoption. To date, only Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Zambia have volunteered to undertake the assessments. Ghana has completed its assessment. Zambia conducted its assessment in 2021, and Cote d'Ivoire's assessment is still pending. And these tools are designed to help member states evaluate their structural vulnerabilities and resilience, which provide a framework for identifying and mitigating potential conflict risks. And so the limited uptake highlights the need for increased awareness and support to encourage more member states to participate in these important initiatives.
Then on December 18th, there's a session dedicated to silencing the guns and the adoption of January's program of work, which was a session initially planned to happen on the 12th of December. The review of the Silencing the Guns initiative is very crucial. We recall that it has been extended to 2030 during the 14th Extraordinary AU Summit, but the growing spread of conflicts presents significant challenge to the initiative. The PSC will need to assess the gap between their vision and the reality on the ground. It's expected that it would be a spotlight on the setbacks being faced in the journey to achieve the objective of silencing the guns, and how and what kind of adjustments can be made to stem the tide of the increase in number of geographic spread of conflicts. Then on the 19th of December, the only ministerial level session that is being convened focused on a country-specific situation will take place, focusing on Somalia's post-ATMIS security arrangements. With ATMIS's mandate ending on the 31st of December, there are concerns over the readiness of its successor, AUSA. This ministerial session is expected to provide guidance on how to manage the operationalization of the new mission, as ATMIS's mandate nears its expiration with yet a ton of loose ends. And finally, there's the informal consultation on political transitions. Since April 2023, this format has allowed the Peace and Security Council to engage with suspended AU member states in a less formal setting. The session also comes in the wake of the authority of heads of states and government of ECOWAS, giving Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger 6 months from January 29th to July 29th, 2025 to reconsider their decision to exit the regional bloc. The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Torre, announced the 6-month grace following the 66th ordinary session of the Authority of ECOWAS Heads of States and Government.
And that brings us to the end of another episode. We wish Djibouti a very fruitful month as it takes the chairship for December 2024. And we wish everyone taking part in the work of the PSC productive discussions on the important topics outlined briefly here today. We are happy to encourage our listeners to dig deeper into the PSC's agenda as well as the analytical work that we produce. Before we go, as usual, we'd like to wish the following countries happy national days of celebration in December. We have Tanzania on 9th of December, Kenya on 12th of December, and Libya on 24th of December. Let me also thank our listeners for joining us for this month's edition of Conversing on Africa's Peace podcast. We hope you have a great end of your year and a Merry Christmas. We'll be back next year to consider the PSC's agenda for January 2025. Until then, goodbye. We wish you all peace and prosperity.